Thank you and welcome to Snowy Valleys Council meeting of the Thursday the 15th of August 2019. I'd like to thank the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respect to elders past and present. This meeting is live streamed on Council's website to allow the community to follow debates and decisions without the need to attend meetings in person. Members of the public attending or speaking at a meeting agree to have their image, voice and personal information, including names and address, recorded and publicly broadcast. Snowy Valleys Council does not accept liability for any defamatory remarks or inappropriate comments that are made during the course of the meeting. Any part of the meeting that is held in a closed session will not be streamed. Please ensure that all mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or are in silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and no recording of voice or images is permitted. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the building using the nearest exit and follow the instruction given by the wardens. Do not use the lift. Please note that the new Code of Meeting Practice, which was adopted by Council recently, will be applied at this and future meetings, including those in the public gallery. Ask for apologies and leave of absence.
Councillor Pritchard's got one there, and I'll move that we accept that.
Thank you. Seconder? All in favour? Carried.
Councillor Ham. Councillor Ham, yeah, right. Councillor Ham, second.
Councillor Ham, yeah. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Some on the board there.
Yes, I'll do first. Thank you.
Councillor Isserman.
Mr Mayor, I'm Margaret Isserman, declare a non-pecuniary interest in relation to report 12.1 due to being Secretary of the Rotary Club of Batlow, and I will be leaving the room during the discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Isserman. Councillor Benjamin.
Adriana Benjamin, declaring a pecuniary interest in relation to report 10.14, DO number 2019/00075, 33 Merivale Street, Tumut, as I'm the General Manager of the head office in the company and I will be leaving the room during this discussion. I declare a pecuniary interest in relation to report 10.9, Tumut CBD accessibility and amenity projects. Scope definition is due to being the project manager of 71 Wynyard Street, as I'm the project manager and I will be leaving the room for discussion. I declare a pecuniary interest to report 10.9, Tumut CBD accessibility and amenities project due to being the leasee of 57 Russell Street, Tumut, and will be leaving the room. I declare a non-pecuniary interest in the relation to report 12.1, Snowy Valleys Council community grants due to Tumut Cycle Classic, as I look after the finances, and I'll be leaving the room for that discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Benjamin. Scroll up.
Councillors, I have a non-significant pecuniary interest in relation to item 10.9, Tumut CBD accessibility and amenity project scope definition, due to my partner having a leased premises in the Tumut CBD, and I'll leave the meeting during this discussion, which will include the public forum.
Thank you. Mr. Brown. Thank you.
Mayor, councillors, General Manager and senior staff. My name's Martin Brown and I'm a member of the Snowy Valleys community. Hopefully you will have already read the report to Council, item 10.11, from the Division Manager Community Services, Tracy Wiggins. But I'll summarise the points. The New South Wales Government passed legislation requiring public authorities to produce a Disability Inclusion Action Plan, or a DIAC. Snowy Valleys Council staff consulted with the community to create the DIAC, or the plan. The plan was adopted by Council. The plan included the requirement for a reference group. Expressions of interest were called for community members to become part of the reference group, and this group has commenced work on completing the actions called for in the plan. The reference group recently met with the Community Welfare Committee based in Tumbarumba regarding the future of both groups. Both groups recommended to Council that Council recognises the DIAP reference group with the Community Welfare Committee becoming a subcommittee of that group. So we have a group of very capable people who have the best interests of all members of the Snowy Valleys community in their focus. Where do I fit in? Some time ago, I was in a situation where for 2 years I was not able to walk without assistance. I very quickly became aware of the shortcomings of trying to get around, being dependent on someone else to drive me, of being in a wheelchair, of using a pickup frame, and of using crutches. So when expressions of interest were called for the DAP group, I put my hand up to be part of the Council's process. I've also connections with a number of Tumbarumba community committees and with Tumut and Batlow Rotary clubs. I've therefore been involved in the meetings of the reference group, and we have been successful in achieving some of the goals of the Council's Disability Inclusion Action Plan, working to help all people in the Snowy Valleys area to have access to facilities that are available to the community. I therefore encourage councillors to adopt the recommendations of the report at item 10.11 of the business paper. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are through the mayor.
Thank you, Martin. Any questions? Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Those leaving the room?
Do we have a councillor representative on the DAP group? Should we have one?
In the recommendation.
Great.
So,
Excuse me, we've got to resolve that we do put someone on.
And name the councillor on the DAP group for item.
Oh, so when we get to item 10.11.
yeah, that'll be later in the business paper.
Yeah.
Okay. Cassie. Welcome. Thank you. 5 minutes, I'll let you know when you've got 1 minute left. Or maybe you don't need that long, I don't know.
Thank you. I'll try and be quick. Thank you for
Nancy.
having me, Mr. Mayor. Mr. General Manager's gone, but everybody else, I think we're all know each other. Well, I feel very strongly about putting my case so it's on the record. I've written to all of you. I've had a lovely response from Ms. Councillor Ham and from Mr. Smith over there, but I feel it needs to go on the record. So I'll quickly get on with it. Since my family started the process of developing property in Tumut, I've been asking for the Shire to create an overall CBD strategy and planning. Even today, there is nothing that can guide a developer in making investment decisions, and here we are again for the second time proposing to upgrade part of our CBD without such a plan. In relation to maintenance, please refer to, look, I've got some documents I was handing around. Someone do that?
I'll do that.
So, and in our documents you'll find a letter from Council to the LHAC, which makes it very clear that at present Council is unable to budget adequate funds for maintenance of our main street, even for health associated reasons, when it is obviously necessary, confirmed by the fact that those Council workers doing the cleaning for us need to wear what I call moon suits for ONH reasons. Our pavers look tired because regular maintenance and cleaning was not carried out during the last 25 years. Root pruning and general tree maintenance did not happen, resulting in uneven footpaths. To replace paving at present without an adequate budget for the regular maintenance would just be wasting funds. Cleaning of garbage bins and further plantings and more appropriate trees, not the shade mask or rootstock that grace our streets at present. Please go and visit Harden and Woorowa to see what shade masters should look like. Would be wonderful. That these gardens, etc., will require more funding for maintenance, and that's no problem and is important, but please consider the impact of ongoing costs in the long term. Most of the budget is set aside for removing old and laying new pavers. There are many ways to deal with footpath trees, and they don't require always expensive pavers. In fact, I don't believe the 1.4 million will get you the right quality to do all of Green Street. Please look at a photo I provided of a Victorian town already sent to some of you by another ratepayer. Again, visit Harden. How about becoming a recycle town and using recycled asphalt and having a living footpath that can be used by the community to relay messages and information, growing and changing as we grow. So many ideas were put forward at the Chamber meeting, but what a waste of community resource when 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the impact on retailing. Again, please note the 2 photos I have provided. A number of businesses are weighing up their options. This year's spring-summer trading will make or break them. If it drops further, they will not attempt another winter. It will see some not survive. September, October, November and December, but especially October and December, are the months that will be needed to be good enough to carry them through February, June and July and August of next year, the slow months. This was made very clear with those present at the Chamber meeting last Tuesday. Russell Street is missing out again. It took over 10 years before Russell Street retailers benefited by any improvements last time. This was only 15 years ago. It becomes divisive, and despite that we have no entrance to our main street at Fitzroy Corner and nothing has ever been done to include these areas, a point well made by some of the members and great ideas put forward to overcome that. The members that were present at the July meeting were told by the staff that they needed to vote for one of the 3 options as per your meeting papers. This was rightly explained as there is no time for further discussion. We cannot afford to lose the funding. There were 15 people present, including council reps. We chose to vote for what we received. 1 minute. To get the best bang for our dollar. The voting was 8 to 6. Not a huge majority when you include the vote for one member who was not present. So, it's going to sound a bit funny now because I'm going to skip a couple of pages. I get it. We have access to 1.7 million to spend by the 31st of December, or we'll lose it. I get that. Something close to parking when that failed might work. I get it that any improvements benefit the CBD, but I believe it is not morally right to spend it in such a way that it is done rushed, without proper planning, putting businesses at risk, making others feel they have been left out a second time, and the general ratepayer and landowners and community does not have any input at all. The job will be harder for the workforce, and heaven knows how many tonnes of pavers will be thrown into landfill because they were not maintained adequately in the first place. Consumerism at its worst. I do not believe that your proposal can be done to an acceptable quality paver within the budget, even allocated to merely Wynyard Street. Nor do I believe that it can be done in time to meet your deadlines. My simple maths gives you 10 minutes after the tendering process. Thanks for listening to me, and I just wanted it on the record. No offence,
Thanks,
I like a good main street.
Let you go a little bit over there, so but I knew you were close to finishing. So thank you. Any questions for Nancy? Thank you very much for your input.
Yes.
And thank you for your correspondence. Someone with the manager knows? Councillors, that brings us to confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Lada, Councillor Wright, all in favour? Sorry, anything arising from those minutes?
Any update on the blue-green algae?
Yep, through the chair. Council's attempting at the moment to try and get an appointment with the Water Minister. We believe we may have secured an appointment to try and obtain some funding for that project. The project is progressing well, and the community meeting that we had went very well as well.
So the concept designs are in place, they're started?
The process has started, yeah, but the design obviously hasn't finished yet.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. So, Councillor Lada, yes?
Just in regard to the traffic committee meeting, if we could place on the agenda for their next meeting as a response to that, the intersection near the brewery.
Yes, Kappa Street,
Yeah.
Snowman's Highway intersection. We can do that.
That's why I'll make a note of that. Thank you. Anything further from those minutes? Nothing? Takes us to governance and financial reports, 9.1, Snowy Region Construction and Development Conference, November this year.
Move to pass.
Councillor Risselman, Councillor Ham. Councillor Risselman.
I was attending this particular conference last year, and I'd highly recommend anyone who hasn't as yet attended this particular conference to do so, and congratulate the Mayor on him that he's being invited to speak at this conference.
Thank you, Councillor Risselman. Anyone else like to speak? Put the motion, all in favour? And if councillors can indicate later by email if they wish to attend. That's unanimous. Yeah. 9.2, Governance and Financial Reports. This is Life After Amalgamation Forum, 16th and 17th September in Terrigal. And there's two recommendations there. Councillor Ham. And Councillor Risselman. Councillor Ham.
I think this is very important that we do have representation at this. I personally, unfortunately, I cannot go. I'd really like to see someone from the southern end go. I'd like to see anyone from Snowy Valleys Council go. But just on this topic, amalgamation, is I'll be meeting with Joe McGurr, Justin Clancy, General Manager, and the Mayor with Minister Hancock on the 22nd to talk about amalgamation, and we'll be talking about the dissatisfaction of some people that have passed that on to. Yes, but my recommendation is that we do have representation here.
Other speakers? Put the motion, all in favour? That's unanimous. Rates harmonisation, 9.3. The recommendation is the Council receive the report on rate harmonisation and to defer rate harmonisation until July 2021, which leaves it for the new Council. Councillor Risselman. Councillor Lana. Any debate, Councillor Risselman?
Just to say that this report is timely and recognises that there is a need to take a steady and sensible approach to rate harmonisation, not rush into it. And I think it's appropriate that, as a council, we recognise the difficulties in relation to this and take our time.
Thank you. And further? General Manager.
Councillors, all the general managers of the amalgamated councils were brought together for a meeting with the CEO of the Office of Local Government a couple of weeks ago. All those general managers agreed that the IPART recommendations form a critical component of this, and those IPART recommendations aren't likely to be implemented in the same timeframes, which will cause us various issues about a series of changes from essentially the valuation change 1 year, the following year special rate variation change, the amalgamation rate harmonisation change, and then likely to be the IPART rate recommendation change. So that would mean 4 consecutive years of significant changes to rates for the Snowy Valleys residents and for all amalgamated council residents, and we don't believe that that is a good practice. So we're lobbying to actually have all those changes to be brought together. And I will include some information on that when we meet with the local government minister.
And is that likely to be in 2021?
That's likely to be the following year. So if council was to do the rate harmonisation in 2021, then in 2022 year we would actually have some of the IPART recommendations needing to be carried out, which means that we would need to redo our rate. So one of those is currently we rate on unimproved value. There is a recommendation in IPART that we move to improved value rating, and that would have a significant effect on our rating categorisation. Obviously we still collect the same amount of money, but it's how that money gets distributed. So if you think of what impact that would have, Essentially, for 4 years in a row, it would be really difficult for our residents to actually understand how their rates are changing. It would be a lot of work for us to actually try to explain that to them, whereas if we were to bring some of those together and have a more efficient process, that would be a much better
So
outcome.
it makes sense to actually lobby for it all together. It all happens in 22.
Possibly in 21.
Thank you. Any further? Put the motion in favour? It's unanimous again. Uh, 9.4, review carryovers for 2018-19. Councillor Ham. Councillor Love. Councillor Ham. Do you need any explanation on any of this? Or?
Well, my only question about this is, and I know it's a big concern, and you know, Nancy just touched on it as well, is community grants. You know, we're carrying them over. When does it happen? When do they need to be acquitted? Is there any way, as she said, the Main Street may not be done, or some of these things may not be done. How lenient is the New South Wales government in allowing us to have a bit more time?
If I may, through the chair, the requirements under the NCIF and SCCF programs is for the commitment to be made, but the expenditure may occur after that commitment. So the New Council Implementation Fund and the Stronger Country Communities Fund Round 1 has to be committed by the 30th of June this year, so that's passed. But as long as those commitments are done, we can actually have that expenditure in this financial year, and that meets the guidelines. We have on occasions applied for some of those projects to have specific extensions, and that's separate to that general rule.
Do you normally that happens if you?
That's correct. It was a very short time frame to carry out those projects, and sometimes we do have those commitments that go over financial years, and that's an acceptable process.
May I have a question, please, Mr. Mayor? I noticed that in this report it mentions projects funded by grants, including the Stronger Communities grant that's not presented in this report. Is that the Stronger Communities grants that are part of the amalgamation funding?
Through the chair, there's a difference between Stronger Country Communities and Stronger Communities. One of those is the amalgamation, and the other one is a separate funding program under the Office of the Premier and Cabinet.
So if I may just make a question, if I may. Pioneer Street stormwater and others, I was understanding that they were part of some of the Stronger Communities funding from amalgamation and merger.
Through the chair, I'm not aware of that one. Might have to take that one on notice unless one of the directors is able to answer that question. Yes.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, there was some funding available for Pioneer Street dealing with some of the stormwater issues through the SRV, and that is in addition to the grant funding to upgrade Pioneer Street. That's what Council was asking. Yeah, so we see that as a separate project, and that was one of the discussions we had with the BDL, and that we'll manage some of those stormwater issues separate to the grant funded works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, nothing further? 9.4, I'll put it. All in favour? Carried. Unanimous. 9.5, NCIF, SCIF, SCF quarterly report, August 2019. Councillor Larder, Councillor Benjamin. Councillor Larder.
Noticing that financial review this morning, there was obviously some communication about Wall Street, etc., and some downturns there and projected things. Are we finance team?
You've jumped.
I'll jump on it,
You've
sorry.
jumped.
You like to
I'll
talk on
save
this one as well?
I'll save that question.
Would you like to talk on the governance quarterly report? On the funds?
No, obviously.
Anyone else? Councillor Ham?
I was going to ask if we could go into committee about.
Sure. Absolutely. Councillor Ham, Councillor Kisselman, all in favour of going to committee? Carried unanimously.
with that one.
Do you want to go first, Mark?
Okay.
Okay. There's so much in here about what is happening. I thought it was important we did discuss it. I just want to firstly discuss the Brindabella future plan. And once again say that we're meeting with Minister Paul Toole on Thursday to discuss getting funding for the business plan to continue with that and to make something happen. And I think Councillor Schmidt, there's a talk of a forum, isn't there, about the Brindabella Road to try and get a whole community swell for it? Yeah.
That's currently in the planning stages, and there's a meeting on the 22nd, which I just discovered I'm unable to attend because of the conference that we're going to. So I'll be contacting the organisers of the conference and getting my information into them.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor, if I could. Just looking at the entries here on stage 2 and stage 1 for the Batlow cannery site.
What page is that on, Councillor?
I'm looking at Pine,
36?
page 40 on the actual.
Yep, got it.
Batlow cannery, in one entry it says property purchased here. Submissions have been received, structural and environmental assessments completed with draft reports, works being scoped, and it's got 279 left. And then down in stage 2, it's talking about, get there? Sorry about that, Peter.
Okay, got it.
Batlow cannery site business case.
Yes, got that.
Scoping development, 200,000. The two numbers don't quite manage to work, and I'm just wondering if I could have a clarification between those two entries, please.
I haven't been following your, through Mr. Mayor, I haven't been following your, what pages you're on.
So we're here with that one.
Okay, so there's two separate budgets for the Batlow Cannery. One being $500,000, which has got approximately 270,000 left, 279,000 left, following the purchase of the site. And the other is for a business case for the Batlow Cannery reuse, and that is $200,000 funded externally. So together they will lead to a combined outcome, but they're funded separately.
So if the $200,000 to cite a business case,
Yes.
Seems incredibly out of balance with only 270 left to actually develop, upgrade the site and clear the site and so on. It seems to be the wrong direction, if I could possibly put it there. I think Batlow community wants to see the site really nicely upgraded and all the nasty, ugly site going. I'm getting the feeling that's not going to happen.
Through Mr. Mayor, there's a report in the confidential section that is confidential because it talks about the expression of interest submitters. So I can't mention that because it's commercial in confidence, but there is a general recommendation to go to the market to do some targeted demolition. It is true that to demolish the whole site would be unaffordable in accordance with this fund, and there is also a recommendation within that today to proceed to a business case. And we would like to, we've left the recommendation open enough to be able to redirect some funding, if we have some surplus funding from the business case, back into the demolition, and we'll request that from the government funding bodies. We don't know whether that will be approved, but we think it's a reasonable request, which will happen operationally if council resolves that recommendation.
Thank you. That's an excellent outcome. Could I have one other, please, if I may? On my page 43, town upgrades for Tumut Room, Batlow and Talbingo. I'm concerned that we have given a date, even here on this paper, 6th of the 8th, to be targeted. I was on a walk through with a number of council people back in late April, May, and was told that it would happen in 6 weeks, in Batlow at least, and other townships as well. And I see here that equipment purchase being finalised. There's there's such a lack of transparency in the fact that community get told a particular date something's going to happen and then it's not happening. So I'm just making the point that we need to make sure that when we're putting that information out to the community that we're accurate and that people are able to meet the targeted dates for what they hope to achieve, and not put false hope into the community, because this has been ongoing for some time. Young people have been expecting the town Wi-Fi in Batlow to come as long ago as 12 months ago, when it was raised by Interact as a letter to the council. So I'm just saying, let's get it right and let's not put any dates down that aren't achievable. But let's hope we've got some direction now. Do we have any idea of a time frame now?
Mr. Stone, could you take it on notice and advise?
I certainly will, Mr. Mayor. Yes.
Thank you.
Roll that vote. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions if I can.
Councillor Wright.
The Tumut showground installation of the turf is postponed. Will that still be ready for next year's start of the rugby league football season? It sort of hasn't been seeded yet and looks pretty ordinary, like not much happening there.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we had intended to get the turf down immediately, and just because it was so cold this winter, we delayed that. There's risk that the turf wouldn't take, it might fail. The intention is, as soon as it warms up a little bit, the turf will get in, and yes, it's on track to be fully serviceable.
And it's going to be turf, not seeded.
It's going to be turf, correct. Yes.
The other question I've got is on the creekscape.
Yep.
There's a quotation for fencing in boggy areas. I hope the fencing's going to be a lot better than the fence that was put around the caravan park. I hope there's a bit of consultation there.
I'm sure we all feel that way, Councillor Wright.
Without any doubt.
Noted. Yes.
Thank you.
We'll provide you some further advice on that.
I see no problems with that fence at all. I look at some of the fencing in Batlow and wonder why.
Councillor Smith.
Yes, I have a question, Mr. Mayor, regarding the signage replacement. It's in progress. The budget is $401,000. So far, only $85,000 has been spent. I would have thought that signage replacement with the new SBC signage to be of a very high priority in the scheduled work. And it's a bit disappointing to see that we've done less than a quarter of that work at this point in time.
Well,
Can we have an update on how that's actually going to be resolved?
We can ask for that, yes.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Smith, I'm aware that some of the delay was around having the destination marketing strategy finalised and working out how that would inform the signage strategy, particularly around the town entry project. The last update that the PMO received was that is on track. Yeah, it will meet the timelines.
That's good.
Thank you. Councillor Larda.
Just in relation to the implementation of the new SVC destination brand marketing strategy, I've got to say that initially I thought that there was the potential for this to become another dust collector. Page 39, the last. But of particular note there, I think this has been a success, and I think, you know, time will obviously prove this correct, because there was there was some branding that went out during the snow over the weekend, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was something like 117,000 shares or hits, or I'm not a social media.
117 or 119,000. Just don't have them in front of me through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
But it was certainly in that vicinity. It was a very successful weekend of hits via social media.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that's evidence that this is, you know, it's got some legs.
Councillor Larda. Councillor Cross.
Yes, is there any update to the Jack Rowling Memorial being lit and the path? I wondered if there was an update on what's happening there.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that project's still being scoped out. We'll meet the timelines, and we'll come back with some more detail to councillors once we've got that once we've got that detail together.
We'll know what kind of lighting you're anticipating and the implications of that.
Yes, we'll read that back.
Good. Thank you.
If I may, through the chair, just note that that's a round 2 program, so our priority at the moment is getting round 1 all wrapped up, and we've got a bit longer time frame for round 2, so that's why it's just in the scoping stage.
Thank you.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, Tumut pump track and cycling track, it says here that the contract has been engaged, concept design submitted and approved. Have we seen those concept and design plans?
Through you, Mr Chair, that they were publicly, so they went out publicly, part of the media release, but I'm happy to get those out again.
Be able to get a bit of a report on it as well, if possible?
Yeah, they're also included in the tender report, but I'll put them out again, just so we can all have a look, given that did occur a couple of months ago.
Yep.
And the builders, the team will be on site in the next couple of weeks.
Beautiful.
Which will be great. Yeah.
And that'll be happening just below the skate park?
That's correct, yes.
And the signage is included in that as well? New signage?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Mr Mayor, if I could, through you, just coming on with the signage development, Batlow struggles to have a signage in relation to anything to do with caravan parks at the moment. Our caravan park is closed, but it still has caravan park without a closed sign across. And if you go down to the showground and where we now have free parking, instead of replacing the Tumut Shire Council signage, we have just taken a spray can and put black on the 2 no camping signs there. So the only information we have in Batlow for camping, it looks like it's a vandal attempt to stop it. And sadly enough, those signs in the showground not only are vandalised by us, but there's a spelling mistake on them as well. So could we please try and rectify some of that signage that is there as historically available?
Can we have that addressed, Phil, as soon as possible?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, that was made aware to me last week, and we've set up a task to have it replaced as soon as possible.
Thank you so much.
Can you let us know as soon as it's done, please?
Yes.
Anything further, Councillor Ham?
Just finally, Mr Mayor, in here we've got quite a lot of beautification, playground, things like that. I've noticed while we're getting through these projects that when we've had community consultative committee, we're getting a better product. And I'd actually like a motion when there's things like beautification and playground equipment, that it's actually a consultative committee formed, because we have a lot of people who are way more skilled in the community who can have vision. We've had Councillor Benjamin and Councillor Wright just return from travels overseas and seeing some stunning things. I just don't know if we're doing the same thing here. I'd really like more input into
So you're
those.
proposing a sunset committee for some projects of people who are minded.
Similar to what we've got with the rail car.
Yeah.
Similar to the rail car.
Yeah.
I think particularly with playground equipment, because there's a lot of new philosophies around what kind of playground equipment is more appropriate in terms of giving children experiences of working out where their bodies are in space, for example. So having different rocks to climb over and
Making them disabled.
Yeah, and inclusive as well. So.
If I may, through the chair, council's had this discussion at various workshops and project management updates, and we're going to form a number of those committees. So we're just trying to work out who might be on those committees and for which high-profile projects they will be needed, and that is being implemented at the moment by staff.
Should we have a motion to confirm it?
It would be fine to include an additional part of that motion.
That'd be great.
Once we go to the committee.
Thank you.
I might just highlight the success of the little group working on the Aerodrome showground as well. That's seems to be going very well. So they can be used as a model.
Excellent.
Have we exhausted?
Are you exhausted?
Thank you, Councillor Isselman. Do we have a second for Councillor Isselman? We do. Councillor Smith. All in favour? And that is unanimous. Which takes us to those recommendations, and Councillor Councillor Lada was the mover originally, but that was Smith.
Yeah. And there's Lada and Benjamin that moved. That's an additional lecture.
Okay.
Did that go with that?
No, that's
Yeah, better, thank you.
Happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing further? Put the motion, all in favour? That's unanimous again. Councillor Lada, you ready for this one?
Happy to move that one.
You're on the right page. Everyone else on the right page? Councillor Cross is on the right page. She's seconding it? Okay, Councillor Lada.
I don't need anything specific, but obviously there's some downturn in the US at the moment with regard to stocks. So just asking that the financial team obviously keep an eye on that and advise us if there's anything that in the short term needs to be rectified. And note too that we are going to be changing to a monthly financial report in line with better governance.
If I may comment on that, so councillors, we have included additional information in this report, and as each month goes by, you'll see that additional information provide a little bit more detail. So this is our first provision of that, and it will expand out as we go along. I hope you find it useful. Certainly is some information that councillors and the executive learned at the Australian Institute of Company-Directors course recently.
So on saying that, can I ask why the employee benefits are just like blowing out so much now?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillors, we are seeing an increase this month of in excess of 500,000 over budget for employee wages and benefits. Essentially, this is a timing issue. So when we prepared this year's budget, there was a deliberate decision to capitalise a larger proportion of our wages costs, given the amount of this serious volume of project work that we've got in our books. That work hasn't yet commenced, so wages costs are being expensed normally and they're appearing in the profit and loss, as you see it here. That will change over time as the construction ramps up. And so by the time we get to the end of March quarter and a lot of the construction work is over and done with, we'll see an evening out of the budget against wages bill.
So that's why materials and contracts
related but different. So it's also another timing issue around having to fund the work up front in relation to material and contracts, but not actually getting the income in for that yet.
Thank you. Councillor Cross.
A query about the Alpine Way roadworks. I noticed that there was a collapse in the road, and I'm just wondering if part of that collapse was a new part of the road that we did.
Yeah, no, very different locations. We completed some works, as you see in the statement there, for RMS, or Public Traffic for New South Wales, National Transport for New South Wales, under a private works arrangement. And that was slope stabilisation works, but it wasn't in the area that has slipped recently. Under our maintenance contract with Transport for New South Wales, they've engaged us to repair that slip as well. We've got crews out there working through the weekend to try and get that sorted on behalf of Transport for New South Wales.
So that road's open now?
No.
No, not.
And
Do we know when?
No.
Another query about the. I noticed we're giving 160,000 to the Riverina Regional Library contribution. I wondered what that was about, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I believe that that's our annual contribution to be part of the regional library service. If councillors would like more information on how that's been trended over the past few years, I'm happy to take that on notice and get that back to you.
Because my understanding was that we were actually going to get more funding as well to libraries. So I'm just, what does the $160,000 give us?
Can I take that on notice?
Sure. Through Mr Mayor, in terms of the actual expenditure, we'll have to take that on notice, but there was a meeting only last week where the Regional Library Corporation caught up to discuss how that additional expenditure will be divided up and spent. So we'll get some more information on that over the coming weeks.
Just another query. Yes. I noticed that we get a rebate from the state government for pensioners for their rates. And I wondered if, I'm curious to know if that covers the actual cost to us.
Through Mr Chair, my understanding is that it goes towards the cost but may not cover it completely. However, I will confirm that for you.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I understand that by going to monthly reports there may be some discrepancies and unusual balances that we might perceive that will come through by there being monthly reports. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr Chair. That's correct, Councillor Risserman. So this is the first time we've done month-by-month reporting. Normally we report on a quarterly basis. So we'll see that as our systems improve and our numbers get more integrity over the year, we'll see that even out. And it'll make more sense at the end of the 3-month period.
Just bringing it up to everyone's attention that that will be possibly what we'll see in those monthly reports.
And you've already seen that in this report, so we've already received a quarter's bill, which hasn't been apportioned over the 3 months. We've reported it at the front end of this quarter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any more questions?
So financially, how do you feel we're going?
Is that a statement or a question?
It's a question. It's a question.
Through you, Mr Chair. At this stage, all I can say, councillors, is that we are giving everyone a commitment that we'll be monitoring our expenses and our income very carefully. Part of that is going, and we're quite confident that we'll be able to use this data to make better decisions and obviously inform the quarterly budget reviews. But at the moment, we're going to give the monthly reporting a good shot, and we'll see if that improves our decision making and our reporting.
And if I may, through the chair, also that is an increase in that reporting. There's a separate set of reporting that's a lot more detail coming through to the executive team now and the divisional managers, and there's a requirement for any variations above a certain percentage in dollar to actually be fully explained and reported through to the executive team. So when you get this report at a higher level of council, be very aware that we've done a lot of detailed work behind that. Certainly a lot of emphasis on having a lot more control on our budget matters.
Thank you. Nothing further? All in favour? That's unanimous again. Brings us to 10.1, Management Reports, Health Summit Report. There's quite a few recommendations there. I would like to see an additional recommendation there if one of the councillors wants to remove it, that we investigate or continue to lobby the federal government for funds to plan and develop an Aboriginal health and wellbeing centre at the new Tumut Hospital.
In consultation with
the local
Aboriginal community.
Do you want to investigate or do we want
lobby?
No, we
just continue
to lobby. Yeah.
So remove investigate all and just start with continuing.
So we have spoken to the we have move in a second.
Okay. Across and below.
Yeah. Just in finishing there, we have started to meet with people. We've met with the Deputy Prime Minister, and we've met with a senior official from the Health Minister's office in Canberra. So we've started the process. Councillor Lado, anything further?
Can I even to speak for?
Oh, you go for it.
Who's the mover?
Okay.
Councillor Cross, did you want to speak first?
I wanted to say that it was an excellent evening. We were very, very fortunate to have all the key players in decision making around providing better health for our centre. There was the idea of the partnership that the University of New South Wales and the Murrumbidgee local health district have put forward is excellent, and it's great to see that we've written a letter to Greg Hunt to endorse that. The other thing of interest is that it might give interest to people to know that, and it brings us to the point, to the point 4 about putting some funds towards this, that for a doctor to become a fully qualified doctor after they've been a registrar, it costs around $10,000. For an overseas doctor to come here and practice, it's $30,000, which is a huge impost, which is perhaps why we're not getting as many overseas doctors as we think we would like to. So I commend that to you. But it was a really good, it was a first for us, and it really shows that we're being serious about the health and well-being of our community.
Not necessarily speaking against the point 5 that you put there, please, Mr Mayor, but just recognising that at the presentation we had this morning from the Health Department in relation to the building of our new Tumut Hospital for our local council area, I like it recognised that there is a health and wellbeing area in that new development, and that's a significant point to make in relation to point 5 that you put there.
Probably just recognise that the Chief Executive of the Area Health Service, Jill Ludford, is very genuine, I think, in her commitment to try and solve this issue with the doctors' shortage at the hospital. She essentially advised at the summit that they would do everything within their scope of power to try and assist in that, and whatever that interim modelling looked like, whether it be trying to recruit doctors to be semi-attached to the hospital or training programs or whatever the case may be, she was more than happy to look at doing it. And I know the Tumut Community Association have been very upfront about the problem, and there's a lot of community support for employing some doctors at the hospital, and you know, as a council, I think we need to get involved in that debate, which we have, and we've had this health summit, and you know, I think it was positive, and the fact that we were able to carry that through to the Deputy Prime Minister and to the Health Minister in Canberra cemented that, and also working with our local member Dr. Joe and Justin Clancy and Steph Cook as well to try and solve the problem. They were all very candid and very forthright about wanting to help. So,
thank you, Councillor.
Just to finish, I think.
Before you do, Councillor Hamp, before you wrap up.
Oh, I just wanted to say I attended, and to everyone who organised it, it was really well run, really well attended, and to thank the people involved.
Closing debate.
I would just like to carry on from what Councillor Lata said, that our Chief Executive of the Murrumbidgee Health, Jill Ludford, was actually one of the people instrumental in getting all of those key people around the table, and I think that shows how passionate she is about supporting our area.
Thank you. Put the motion, all in favour? That's unanimous. 10.2, naming of the Adelon Creek Pathway. We'll have a mover. Councillor Wright, Councillor Smith. Councillor Wright.
I just read through and having a lot of depth in it, but looks like a great thing with Adelaide Falls Walkway, and at least it's recognising those former members had a lot to do with. I read the letter that somebody wrote there. I thought it was rather good. Hope the signage is of a good enough quality and not going to fall apart.
Oh, I think there's been a lot of work done on signage in the past. It's all their plans. So.
Yeah.
So, the question is that signage going to be additional to other funded signages we're looking at, or what?
No.
In the project?
Apparently not.
So we're just going to say, go and get the signage and do whatever you like with it, and make it as big as you like, or as whatever you like. We'll fund it.
There's there is funds available for it, but there are some plans for signage that have been done quite some time ago. I don't know whether they'll use those, but I'm sure the community will be involved in this. I hope they will.
I have the question with the new branding that we have, will those signs be compliant with the new branding?
From my understanding, and I'm not sure whether this is going to be the case, but there was individual branding for the Adelong Creek Walk done originally, and those plans still exist. Now, whether they utilise those or whether they use a more modern approach, I'm not sure, but I'm certain unless the director might be able to assist me there, but I'm sure the community will be involved. Director?
Yeah, from my understanding, through you, Mr. Chair, there was some community-funded grant funding for the development of the signage, so it is a community project. And the reason for this report about the naming is to make sure that signage does reflect an agreed naming. Because it's a community-run project, it's not SVC branded. It's not. It's community. Yeah, they made the application for the funding. They got the funding. They're just clarifying with us about the naming.
Will it in fact have the name of Snowy Valley Council on the sign?
I don't think so.
The previous signage, and there's some there already, features like waves following the creek. I think that's what they'll be utilising. But I can ask that copies be sent to councillors if I can talk to somebody from the previous committee.
Mr. Mayor, if it's a desire of the councillors, we can certainly get in contact with the group and invite them to use some of our artefacts out of the building. They might find it useful, and they'll certainly be able to do so if they want to incorporate. If they haven't got designs already, so we can make contact with them.
They should be encouraged.
Encouraged, that's the word.
Anything further? Put the motion, all in favour? Unanimous again. Management reports. Walton Cottage proposed use by Aboriginal Liaison Committee. No, I don't think that's correct. Yeah, that's a mistake there.
It's Tumut Room Namaji Indigenous Corporation.
So there's a mistake in the heading there.
In the heading, yes.
And also in the recommendation 1.
Point number 1, yes.
Yep. It's been. Number 2 is correct. Someone with that change, did someone move that? Councillor Wright and Councillor Hand. Councillor Wright.
I think it's probably about time that building was used for something decent. I don't think it's ever been used since it was built probably 10 years ago. I don't know how long ago. But I think we should just ensure that it's used, it's only the new building that's being used, not the old Wallace cottage. You don't want that sort of being used as a meeting place or used for anything other than that it's been protected.
Maintains as a heritage item.
Exactly, yeah, that was the words. But yeah, no, I think it's great to see it being used for the other building.
Okay, so there's been corrections to those.
Do you want to clarify that in the resolution, councillors? About point 2, about it just being the only for the newer building?
For the new building?
Yes, I think it should be.
Yeah, I think so, that'd be good.
Specified.
Yeah.
And it's not really clear in the report. It is it's clear that the annual maintenance costs $2,300. That's fine, and there's depreciation on the expense which will continue. But it's not clear in the building, and it'll be up to the GM to enter the negotiations about who, like, do we continue with the maintenance or not?
If I may, through the chair, part of these negotiations will be about defining who's responsible for what components, and they'll be negotiated.
Question, is that to do with the electricity used at the property as well?
There will be for all factors regarding ongoing costs that might be incurred. So,
Councillor Wright and Councillor Ham, you're happy with those changes that were made to that
Yes.
recommendation? Anything further? All in favour? Unanimous. The horse.
The horse, of course.
Donation of the sculpture. Councillor Wright. Something about Richard III in here, isn't it? Councillor Ham, is that there? I thought you were just waiting. So the recommendation there, 1 and 2, that the horse go to the Tumut Equine Club and be located at the Tumut Racecourse.
I think it's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea.
I think it's great, lovely to see used in a proper manner, in a correct place, in an appropriate place. Yeah, I think it's terrific. And I think the Equine Centre do a fantastic job there, and we've got to support them. And if they want that, I think it's a great asset for them.
Question? The Iron Horse and Stockman sculpture was obviously made by someone. Does it have somebody's name attached to it as the person who was the artist that developed this, or was it a stop, stand, trace process out of a...
Yeah, it's more generic than...
Yeah.
I'm not sure though.
If I may, there's a place in Wagga where a lot of these sculptures are made, and my understanding is that it was purchased from there on a retail basis. There's no specific significance, and I, for one, welcome the idea that it's not going to be a council responsibility any longer.
Thank you. All in favour? Councillor Smith, all in favour? Yes. Unanimous. Zero waste strategy. Councillor Cross? Councillor Ham? Councillor Cross? Are you moving that way, Councillor Ham?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yes, you are. Do you have
moving to committee.
Does anybody agree with you?
Yes.
Councillor Benjamin, all in favour? Yes, everybody agrees with you. Carried, unanimously. Councillor Ham.
Oh, well, no, I'm talking with somebody. You can have that.
Councillor Cross.
Waste is a significant part of our council's core business, and I think it's really, really important that we look at waste. Currently 4,000 tonnes of waste goes to landfill, and that just really is not sustainable. So we need to look at how we can maximise the use of our recycling. We have in partnership with Valmar, which means that the waste that's collected is sorted so that it becomes clean waste, which then becomes a very valuable product to other companies. It's a really great business opportunity for us to see what we can actually get from this waste strategy. The waste strategy itself is a great document, and I recommend everyone to sit down and read it. I was really interested to read this morning or yesterday in the paper that the country road stores are actually going to be refurbishing their stores and using recycled products within their displays, which I thought was a great initiative and something that we as a council should certainly be looking at when we do any new contracts. So as Martin, our waste man, says, there's no time to waste, which I think is beautiful. way of putting it. So I commend the document to everyone to read.
I agree with Kate what said, and the outline, just two things. One, how did we get there? I'd really like someone to speak about what sort of funding we need to do this. But with the action and the time frame, next to that I'd really like a column and cost, because some of these things won't cost anything, so why don't we get in and do them? Can someone tell me how we're going about applying for funding to achieve?
So that's the record.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. What we're trying to say is the strategy. So there's still, to deliver some of the bigger projects out of this, so we run them through the project management framework, which will go through those steps, including the allocation of funding to these projects. So that work is largely to be done. Obviously, the stuff that doesn't require funding, and if we're resourced and can keep them off, we'll do so as quick as we can.
Yeah.
Most definitely. But,
is there a big grant we're putting in for?
There is, yes, and we'll know the outcomes of that at the end of this calendar year.
Right.
And again, that'll help support the delivery of some of these major deliverables.
We've just got to make sure that some of our proposals are well back, using the correct systems, where we think it's going to cost us 40 grand, it's actually going to cost 140 grand, and we look very silly there, so I think that's got to be so accurate. But it's a great thing, and we've got a great man with Martin, he's so passionate and knowledgeable. I think we've got to embrace that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm concerned that we haven't necessarily looked at the risk factor in relation to Millet's bulk bins, and whether our audit risk committee needs to have a look at what risk we are at in relation to, if, as it's written here, they stay for 10 years, but it's a company, and we are at risk if that company, for some reason, is no longer in existence, because our entire waste structure will be incredibly at risk if something happens in that situation. I'm just wondering if we need to have our audit committee, risk committee, look at the risks that are involved there and report back to us on that particular element.
If I may, through the Chair, Councillor Smith, the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee did a workshop last week in regards to future projects. That information will be presented back to the Audit Risk Committee and up to Council for approval of those projects. We didn't specifically address that matter. That's not to say that that can't be a project that Council takes as part of the Audit Risk Improvement Committee or part of our waste normal works. So certainly could be incorporated.
Thank you.
In the document, the Zero Waste Strategy, there are 64 actions that have been identified that we as a community can even start doing now. And one of the things I was really interested in was that promote the support sharing services such as tool libraries and repair cafes. And I don't know if anybody's seen the ABC lately, but they have this fabulous program called the Repair Shop, and it's based in England, and people bring all their whatever they want to this factory to be, or to these, and they have experts that do all these repairs for nothing. And I was thinking how wonderful that would be if we could maybe engage our men's shed or our women's sheds, for that matter, in doing something, setting something up like that.
Just in regard to, I think there'll be some expectation from the community to answer some questions, and obviously that's going to come around after this, around the green waste collections and those sorts of things. Because, ever since I've been on council, that's been one of the hot topics of people wanting a green waste service. And I've got to say, the majority of people have said to me that if it was developed, then they'd be prepared to pay for it. It's more a convenience thing, especially with elderly people. They just don't have the ability to load a trailer up with grass clippings and the like. I don't need to go into the... But, I think we need to, flush those things out sooner than later, because we just keep repeating ourselves and not really doing anything with them. you know, we need to at least say we're going to do it or not do it, and, you know, get some facts and figures on it and present an argument to the community about whether it's feasible or not, rather than just keep avoiding it.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just say that I think that Zero Waste, the company, Just Waste I should say, are very inspirational in terms of what they're doing and the material that they've presented. Having been present at some of the community consulting sessions, they've inspired people to think very differently about waste, and the particular focus that Martin has particularly taken hold of is to stop looking at it as waste, but to start looking at resources and opportunities, and to think about waste in that way. And when you consider that one of the three big R's in council scope of responsibilities, I can see that for the future, this R is going to overtake the other two R's in terms of roads and things like that in significance and importance, because climate change is something that's very high on everybody's agenda, and rubbish and being able to recycle, all 100% of our waste is the ultimate goal, which is very aspirational, obviously. But at least if we're moving towards it, we're doing well. I've noticed, because of going to these consultation meetings and hearing what they've had to say, I only put my bins out once every 6 weeks or something like that, because I'm much more conscious about recycling, and it's something that we can do without costing us a lot of money, is to educate people to do that, and to not only to educate them, but to inspire them to actually reduce waste. Even if they reduce it 10% in their household, that's a big reduction in overall waste. So every little bit counts.
Any questions further? We'll move, we go. Before we do,
I wanted to make note too that Martin is going into our schools and doing and working with our young people to educate them about recycling, to empty their bins and to see, like they do on the Craig Roykeshaw, or whatever his name is, program, divide it all up and see which is recyclable and which is not, to build that idea that we can, if we start young, we can get there.
the war on waste.
Yeah, the war on waste, that's it. Thank you.
Pleasure. So you're moving that we go out?
Yes.
Seconder? Councillor Lara, all in favour? That's everyone. So we've everyone there. We've got the recommendations there. The recommendation on favour. Carried. Everyone. Thinking about the quality policy for public exhibition. So, who in the seconder? Councillor Bisselman and Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Just to recognise that this is one of the new faces of Snowy Valleys Council, showing that it's policy and not necessarily everyday workings of the council at a organisational level. This is a policy that's showing how we want our policies to look, a living document that's readable, that has opportunity for people to look at and understand, and it's not going to be those volumes and volumes of operational elements that are not part of policy planning. So people who look at this policy might think, well, it's very lightweight, but it's actually a very good move, and I'm very, very pleased to see that we're going in that direction for policy development.
Thank you, Councillor Bisselman. Nothing further? The motion, all in favour? Carried. Takes us to home dialysis rebate policy for public exhibition. Unanimous. Councillor Cross. Councillor Ham. Councillor Cross.
I think this is a great policy. It will really help people who are struggling with paralysis, and I think we should endorse it.
Thank you.
No, I agree 100%.
Anyone further? All in favour? That's unanimous as well. Brings us to the tree management policy. Two recommendations there. Goes on 28 days. Mover, Councillor Smith, Councillor Wright. Councillor Smith.
I'm delighted to put this one on the table because, as you know, I brought this issue to council attention several months ago, and to see that things are actually taking place and that a policy is being prepared and developed and going out to the public for consultation gives me a great deal of satisfaction to know that, that there is going to be protection for our trees, and the community is going to be involved in determining that level of protection, and this should make everyone happy, especially the trees.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything further?
I think it's just good that we've taken points of the both Old Tumut Council and Old Tumut Council.
Thank you. Okay, all in favour? Unanimous. Tumut CBD accessibility and amenity project. Some members leaving the room.
Moving all five.
Moving all five. Councillor Cross. Councillor.
Yeah, I endorse this to council. I think this is a great opportunity for us with the funding that's available to make the main street more amenable to the community and to visitors. It's looking very tired. There's obviously a lot of maintenance that needs to be done, and I think this refresh with the upgrading of the paving and paintwork and some changes to the main street will ensure that it's a great asset for the town now and into the future. And the only caveat I put on that is I am mindful of the disruption that can cause that obviously it's been experienced in Wagga, and I think that the director in charge and his team need to ensure that when we do it, if we do it, we get in there and we do it as quick as possible and with a minimum of fuss and delay and disruption for the community. And whether perhaps as part of this we also consider some support to those business holders in the main street that are disrupted in whatever format council felt was appropriate, whether that be some assistance to upgrade their front of house, or a payment to assist with the disruption or whatever. But some show of support, and that we do this in consultation with the business chamber and all the business houses to do it properly, not turn it into a mess.
I think, Mr Mayor, we discussed that in a workshop at one time, and a suggestion was made to compensate the business holders financially to a reasonable, limited degree. I don't know if that actually became part of our...
It's not part of the recommendation.
I don't think we should anyway.
I think doing up the front is a good thing. What I would like to see is that local businesses get an opportunity to tender for some of these
improvements and supply. I'd like to see that.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move in committee if I could. Please.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Yep.
All in favour? Unanimous.
If I could just be indulged for a moment longer, the second thing that I wanted to mention was the comment made by Nancy Hanson this afternoon here in this room about all these bricks being dumped in landfill. I don't want to preempt what the staff might have in mind for all that, but surely we wouldn't consider dumping those bricks that are currently on the pavement in landfill. There must be much better ways of using them, recycling them through our own works and services.
Sell them.
Yeah.
I'm sure they can do something to do with it.
One option with that was the director and I had actually been out to the airport, and there's obviously a lot of necessary works out there, and one of the options was maybe to reuse those pavers out at the airport in some fashion.
Crushed or cold?
Whole to sort of.
It had actually occurred to me also that maybe as crushed as a base for that sort of use, that'd be very good.
Mr Mayor, if I may.
Sorry.
I hate to be a very negative sort of person, but on this occasion I feel I need to speak out. In April it was discovered that the parking strategy in Tumut was no longer able to follow through, and we now have this particular plan and process. May, June, July, 3 months. Batlow's been waiting to get to this level for 2 years, and we still haven't got to this level. And I think we need to be really conscious of the fact that we are not supporting our small towns. We really are focusing on the 2 major towns, and the developments that's going on there leave the smaller communities way, way behind. And this is a typical example of what I'm speaking of. I think it's a great development and it should go ahead, but I would just like to make the point that at this point in time, there is nothing happening in some of these small country towns, the smaller communities, at all. And I don't think that's particularly a good thing and a good look for us at Snowy Valleys Council. I think we need to make sure that we get some of this balance back into some of the smaller communities. And who knows where those pavers may end up, possibly on the streets of Gold and Batlow. I don't know, I'm just making a comment, but please take that as comment. Thank you very much.
Councillor, it's a valid point.
Yeah.
Take it.
I think
we all hear you.
the only thing in reply to that, and I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Isselman that we haven't done what we projected to do with Batlow, but that funding was state government funding tied to Tumut, not
This funding,
yes.
This funding was originally to purchase land for car parking, which was unsuccessful.
And the hold-ups in Batlow have been to do with problems with contracts and the project management rather than council's decisions.
I don't think we'd help.
Still, it's time.
We could.
I'd debate that, but still.
Councillor Cross.
I think it's a great opportunity to look at how we can incorporate branding into the design. So looking at pavers that have got leaves in them and seats that are designed like the falling leaf to fall in, or like the leaves to fall into line with our Festival of the Falling Leaf concept. I think one of the things that came out of the Chamber of Commerce was that we need to have a really close relationship with them during this process so that we can work out when they have key events like the Christmas in shopping evening, so that from Russell Street through to Fitzroy Street, if we can get that done first, or maybe put off for a later date and do the other. So minimal disruption for that event.
It certainly does for that 3 Mr Mayor. In point A, it's incorporated new paving with what's been termed aesthetic themed design, so that falls in line. And in the concept plans that are attached, there is a leaf showcased in the paving. And in terms of discussion with the Tumut Chamber of Commerce, There's definitely, they've alerted us to a specific event. They want to make sure there's no roadworks that are, or no pavement works or anything like that that are interrupting with an event in mid-December. So this recommendation allows for us to have close collaboration with the Chamber and the wider business community.
I think one thing, I strongly disagree with any financial assistance to any businesses in town. Tumbarumba went through all this a few years ago. All of us in the street did suffer financially for a little while, quite a lot, but we've all made our money back plenty of times because now the street is a showpiece and a wonderful street, and we have people walking down our street all the time. So I think it's just one of the things we've just got to hold hard. You know, I was a whinger about it when it was happening, but I might like to add now that it is of great benefit to Tumbarumba, the street upgrade that we had.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Cross.
Is there an ability for us to be able to delay some of these works until after Christmas? Because I know that most businesses make most of their money around Christmas time, and if we could be more mindful of that, is that something that could happen?
It certainly allows us to, point F of the recommendation under point 2, limiting disruption to retailers by undertaking the works outside of the main Christmas trading period. And if that means we can get things committed, as Mr. Hyde was saying, around those projects, we can certainly spend the money after the Christmas period. So it gives us a level of flexibility to make sure we can work in with those key trading times, so as not to disrupt the businesses too much. There will be some disruption. We're trying to make sure we work closely with the business community and the Chamber of Commerce to minimise that as much as possible.
And I think if we keep them in the loop all the time, we really focus on that communication, that I think hopefully that will minimise any discord.
That's right. We'll certainly be consulting heavily with them.
Good. Thank you.
And again, I'm hopefully negative today, but hopelessly negative. I do apologise. When the funding was first arrived for Tumut CBD to have a parking strategy, and that negotiation that was conducted in relation to that parking strategy, there was an incredibly major flaw in the way that was taken on board and the way it was conducted, because we lost ground and lost negotiating skills, because it became quite clear to people who own certain properties that there was profit to be made, and the whole management of that particular exercise was, I have to say, incredibly poorly done. And we as a shire, whole shire, have lost a very real new asset to the township of Tumut because of the way that was managed. And I think that's very disappointing, because having that central area of the town being focused inward and having it developed instead of being as it is would have been so much better than renewing all of the paving and the street upgrade and so on. I really think that's disappointing, and it needs to be said that we need to be very careful and recognise the mistakes that were made then and not make anything again when we're looking at project funding and getting projects to work, because that's a great loss of asset to us as Snowy Valleys Council.
Certainly, you're right, the original proposal was very valid and made a lot of sense, but it just wasn't attainable. But there certainly is a need for, according to anecdotally, there's a need for more parking in the centre of Tumut, and we'll look for future funding to make that happen.
So is consultation finished for the Main Street upgrade?
No, it will continue.
Will continue.
It should continue right through the process. It should always, until it's finished, even post completion. Do we move out of committee?
Yeah.
Thank you. Everyone finished? Councillor Isselman, Councillor Wright, all in favour? It's unanimous. Okay, so we've got the recommendations there. All in favour? Councillor Isselman, you in favour?
Yes.
Yes, that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. You have to report it. Councillor Benjamin, Mr. Hyde, just confirming that those recommendations were adopted as written. Moving on to management reports, end of year operational plan update. Councillor Larder, Councillor Ham, all in favour? Oh, hang on, let's go through it first. Let's not vote on that before we go through it. Councillor Larder, would you like to open up?
I'm happy to receive the report unless any of the directors have got anything further to add.
Going at this stage.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I look at these pie charts, I think they're all pretty good, but they're pretty confusing in that, until somebody told me that, like if you look at any of them, it's got 70.31 or it's a comma 31, and that means 70 projects, and it's actually 31%. And I think, you know, anybody in the community looking at that would probably be, well, I suppose they might be smarter than me, I don't know, but I had trouble with that, you know, and I think it just doesn't look that good. But also it's a pretty bad indictment on where we're at with these. Some of them only halfway through and even less than halfway through, so yeah, I think that's all.
So the explanation, Councillor Wright, is the first number is the number of actions and the second number is the percentage.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor.
Just before the council staff speak, in saying that, Councillor Wright, yes and no. The council operational plan review, which is part of the papers, I mean, when you really do look on it, like a lot has been done, and the people who have made that happen, it is to be commended. You know, and things are progressing. I think you can get bogged down a little bit too much in, you know, things haven't been done, but when you actually go through and see how very few things haven't been started, how many things are progressing, and I mean, you know, it's a brand new council. It's, you know, it's got limited resources. It's in some parts. I think it's quite incredible what we've got.
Councillor Ham. Certainly there's a lot on the books, but we are 2 years in as a council and we've only got 1 year to run. So, anyone?
Yeah, I think we're. I think those pie graphs sort of. Happy to do that. I think those pie graphs sort of, they don't really show a true indication of what's happened. There's a lot of projects that's just, you know, we're sitting on, you know, and that's unfortunate. And it hasn't been ideal in my view. There's a lot of things that could have been commenced and should have been commenced that haven't been. And you know, I think we need to address that, and we will. So.
And also probably be a bit more realistic in the operational plan.
That's a statement that Councillor Larder's closed debate, and I think that's a lot of what Councillor Isselman intimated in the previous recommendation. So I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Okay, disability inclusion, access reference group and community welfare committee. 5 recommendations there. Moved by Councillor Ham, seconded by Councillor Benjamin. Councillor Ham.
I appreciate Martin coming in and talking to us about this. I'm glad that we've got in there that we appoint a councillor delegate to the disability inclusion access reference group. This has to be a very important part of Snowy Valley's Council, and yeah, support it totally.
Councillors, we're going to ask for any councillor who's interested in being on that committee.
Can you just refer to when they meet and how frequently and where?
Yes, that's a very good point, Councillor, isn't it? Do we know?
I don't.
Monthly, I believe, but I'll have to confirm that.
CWA meets bi-monthly.
I might just go
But
straight
the
to Martin if
committee
just
welfare group, it's
that's okay.
Mr Mayor, the councillors, we meet monthly. We rotate between Tumbarumba, Batlow and Tumut. Currently it's Thursdays, the first Thursday in the month at 11 a.m. But that can vary depending upon what is required.
and that's a problem for
That's
us.
the problem.
Conflict with our...
We have it, that's our workshop day.
If there was a councillor who was particularly interested, I think it's worthwhile reflecting a change in date and time to incorporate flexibility.
Can we take that on notice and nominate a councillor later? And look for changes?
And maybe talk to the group so they might be able to change the time. You can, that'd be great.
Yeah. So can we add to, if the mover and seconder are happy with it, that the general manager be authorised to allocate, select appropriate councillor in consultation with the mayor to sit on the committee.
Surely we would all be appropriate.
Well,
Well, Mark.
I didn't say inappropriate.
Select a councillor.
A councillor, thank you, councillor. Just a minute. Moving second, happy with that? Councillor Lisson, are you happy with that?
Thank you so much.
All right, so there we got the 6 recommendations. Put the motions. All in favour? All in favour? Carried. Unanimously. Thank you. Service New South Wales, easy to do business program. 3 recommendations. Councillor Ham and Councillor Cross.
Yes, I think this is finally important that we give the general manager authority to enter into this contract.
We've certainly spoken to these people quite a few times.
And their new facility is tremendous.
Fantastic. Okay.
I think it would be a revelation for small business owners to think that they've just got one phone call to make.
Fantastic. I'll put a motion all in favour.
Is this an efficiency that could be really worthwhile for us to be involved in?
So,
Yeah.
And it's free.
10.13, Australia Day celebrations and procedures.
Can I move
Councillor
to
Ham,
committee?
Councillor Isselman,
Thank you.
Councillor Isselman,
Move to committee, please.
seconder. Councillor Wright.
Do you need to move it first?
I have done that. Did you get all that, Susan? Happened pretty quickly. All in favour? Unanimous, so we're in committee.
Well, I'd like to start, if I can.
Shoot.
I'm really disappointed to read in the report that Tumbarumba Award ceremony past attempt to include the ambassador has been denied by the committee out of favour of the way things have always been done. Don't think that's true. And certainly this aspect, Indigenous communities, it says here that Tumbarumba doesn't acknowledge our Indigenous leaders and past people, which is just crap, you know. Like we've always done. I've been on the committee for a long time. I've been to dozens of Australia Day ceremonies, and they're beautifully done. They're very happy events, and that everybody is included, particularly our Indigenous people, with So I feel really hurt that that report would come out, saying that we don't do stuff that we actually do. It's really bad.
It's not well researched at all.
Not well researched at all. Whoever wrote it, I'm sorry. Also feel strongly that our communities need our own voice, and we need our own Australia Day events. I believe in one Snowy Valleys Council. That's what we're elected for, and I'm I do believe in that. However, I think our small communities still need to have our own committees with our own agendas and elect our own people, because we're the only people who really know our own people in our own communities. I'm quite passionate about this.
You're comfortable with just having one person for the citizens of the year?
Yes, I think as a one Snowy Accountants, SVC, let's say, and that one Snowy
could come from anywhere.
Could come from anywhere, and should come from anywhere. And maybe that's that person might be one of the people who's been elected in each community to be nominated for the SVC one.
So you still have Tumba Awards, and then you have an SVC.
Yeah, you have a Batlow Award, and you have a Talbingo Award, and they could be the nominations for that.
And do you have a Citizen of the Year Senior and Junior for SVC? Plus Tumba, plus Tumut, plus Batlow?
Yes.
Yeah, so you've got those two layers?
Yes.
Okay, it's not clear in our recommendations.
It needs a bit more report, a little bit more thought, and a bit more report.
Personally, I'd like to do a further report. I don't think it's got enough depth in it.
I think it's sort of important to pick up on what Bruce is saying, in the fact that each of the communities within our shire have their own Australia Day ceremony, coordinated by the community, with the exception of Tumut, which has the actual Australia Day ceremony for Snowy Valleys Council. And at that one, the ambassador is present, and the highest awards for our Snowy Valleys Council are made at that Australia Day celebration. Certainly been the case for Batlow community to follow that. Batlow has its own structure of how it wants to give its awards, nominates people for those awards, and then separately nominates people for the Snowy Valleys or the council awards. And we have on occasions had people receive council awards and not be actually nominated for the community award, which was fine, and receive it. We've had people who have received both on the same day, and they've had to decide to come down here or not, whichever they wanted to. On each occasion, those people have become very proud of the fact that they've actually received the council award. And I think, given that we are Snowy Valleys Council and we are all one big council, we need to have a designated Australia Day ceremony, and there's no other place to hold it rather than Tumut, because that is our higher population area. So in my opinion, what Bruce has said is a very, very definite thing. Each of the communities run their own and have identified whatever they might have as their own community awards, and the Australia Day Committee for Snowy Valleys Council determine what the awards are for the Snowy Valleys Council, and that we as council support each of those community celebrations in the traditional ways we have before, with supply of cakes and banners and such like, and that is continuing on. So in my opinion, to be part of the Snowy Valleys Council, we need to be very singularly very supportive of the fact that we are one. If someone from Cancoban wins it, they will be very proud to drive the distance to come to Tumut to be actually able to pick up their award, and I think that's a significant part of what our council is and how it is.
I think maybe we should be encouraging Cancoban to have their own awards as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're going to have plenty to do.
However, I'd like to support the recommendation of 2B that we do event, because it's going to be happening in Tumba anyhow. So it would be lovely, 1 year to have the SVC award being given there, and 1 year in Tumut. They are the two bigger. That's where our two offices are, And I think it acknowledges the northern and southern end. And yes, people then from Brugga will be happy to drive to Tumbarumba with the same argument in reverse.
Well, how do we solve this problem if that's the actual, do we put up that as it is now, because I don't agree with that at all. I think it should say that council retain events in Tumut and not have...
There is an alternative motion.
Yeah, an alternative to the recommendation, a motion alternative to the recommendation that's been developed. Is that's not it?
The other option is to defer, but mindful of the fact that...
Mindful of the fact I don't think we should be able to make a decision here at this table. I really do believe that. We're still in committee, so I'm not having talk.
Look, I'd just like to say I've been to the Tumbarumba Australia Day celebrations for the last 2 years, and apart from a small hiccup at the first one, they ran very, very well and exceptional, and the committee should be really congratulated on the way they run. And I've been to the Tumut ones the same years, and also as Margaret said, in Adelong they have their own awards, and then if you score one at the former Tumut or the Snowy Valleys, you come into Tumut.
Can I just ask a question, clarification within this report? Tumut gets an ambassador from somewhere.
Snowy Valleys Council.
Can I just... Tumut does, but normally that person also speaks at Batlow and Adelong as well? That just is how it's alluded to in the report.
Adelong and then Talbingo. I don't think they went to...
Okay, so Adelong, Tumut and Talbingo.
Tumut, Adelong, then Talbingo in the afternoon.
Yeah, okay. So, and that's, according to this report, will no longer happen. They will only come to Tumut.
Well, they're there for the day, so I mean, it's up to us where they go.
Yeah, it's just written poorly in the report.
I think you might, there might be the possibility that some amalgamated councils get 2 ambassadors or have in the past.
Well, nothing would stop any group from getting an ambassador.
No, that's exactly right.
Yes.
And it's up to the Australia Day Committee,
If they want.
Federal Committee, to make those decisions. It's not up to us. We can make applications.
So that's how it works. The Australia Day Committee sends ambassador. So if that's the case, that means, yeah, I think it would be really nice then that Tumba one day got the ambassador and 1 year and Tumut got the other one, because there are people who are never going to travel to Tumut because they're never going to receive a prize, but they're always going to go to Tumba, so,
And vice versa.
Yeah, and vice versa.
I just don't think that's the right way to go.
Notwithstanding, the speakers at the Tumbarumba Australia Day were exceptional.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no disrespect on what happens at the individual council. I mean, Batlow gets 250 people at their Australia Day. 250 people. I mean, that's probably more than they get at Tumut. It's a huge.
That's because of the breakfast.
I would have to say, if I was asking my group here, and I won't do it, but I bet there's only 2 people who put their hand up that they've actually been to Batlow. Every town runs their own. I just think we need to have the strength of commitment to have a Snowy Valleys Council Australia Day celebration that's where it should be, in the highest population of people, and that it's recognised for that. It shouldn't have to be dragged all over the Snowy Valleys Council. It should be in Tumut. It's where our population is, and it's an incredibly important part of celebration of Australia, and I think we should have a designated place. Now, I recognise that Tumbarumba still has an office as far as Snowy Valleys Council, and I'm certainly no disrespect to Tumbarumba, but 3,000 people are not the voting voice of this council. The voting voice of this council is the people of Tumut, and that's where it should be. It should be in the major population centre. Sydney doesn't have it out at Badgerys Creek or anywhere.
Not here.
It's just this is where the report lets us down, is that we haven't researched enough, and we haven't researched to find out what's doing. Tawong, they moved theirs around. They've got it. They were amalgamated. They went through this, and now they've got a really lovely service doing this. So that is probably my biggest criticism, is the report's not well researched.
I don't think anyone should take away from the fact that these towns are obviously running exemplary award ceremonies.
So was there an alternative to put up as far as a...
I
think it'll have to go to a vote.
There's an alternative place there. if councillors are interested.
So at the moment it's reading rotation, I don't know whether current employment Australia events to
Yes, you reckon we can keep the discussion now and then
And then that brings up the point at the, you know, what happens. So, sorry, I'm just individual strategy. So the events remain as is. It's really what we're talking about, our awards.
Mr. Stone.
Mr Mayor, if there's a councillor who wanted to move that as a different motion, there's already a motion on the table, which is the recommendation, I think, was being moved, if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me, but if they didn't want the rotation of the SVC ceremony between Tumut and Tumbarumba, you can just change point 1 to be in Tumut and then take out part A.
So you'd be, someone would be moving that as an amendment?
So we have to go out of committee to do that?
As the chair, I suggest you continue your discussions so that you're fairly certain about when you go out what, if you want an amendment, and or if you want to modify the original motion, and the mover and seconder wants to do that. So
one event annually in Tumut, starting in 2020. That then we take out point A and we just have B and C.
I'd prefer to just go back to that first motion starting in 2021, and that gives us a bit more time to look into it. We actually go through another election during that time, and people can, and that gives people a bit more consultation about whether this is the way they want to go.
I agree with that. I think that's a good idea.
Well, then I would have to ask that there'd be a B, C, D, that this particular amendment be reviewed for 2021. And I mean, the new council could make up a decision on that, but I certainly wouldn't leave it open.
Well, that does give the community time.
Councillor Wisselman, if you strongly feel on it, amend that to the way you want, move it as an amendment, see if you can get a seconder, and then we'll put it to...
All right.
We'll have to go out of committee first,
Yes.
and then we'll put it to the vote and see what happens.
I mean, the community just expects that, you know, we're going to make decisions on these things. That's why we've been elected.
That's right.
You know, you can't just be putting things off for another 2 years to let someone else down the track fix it up, you know.
That's right. If we make a decision and it goes now, then the new council can go back to it. But we have to make a decision one way or the other.
For us.
Yes.
I'd like to make the comment that there's a lot of emphasis currently on the one SVC project, and in terms of that project and that concept being promoted strongly throughout the whole organisation, that's what we should be aiming for, one SVC.
So I will be asking to consolidate the Australia Awards into one event annually in Tumut, and I will leave it there and move out of committee.
you're happy with all three parts to that?
Oh, it's gone.
So obviously you can't move it yet till you're out of committee, but
It's already one on the table, I think. Move
let's
what
move it as
Councillor-
an amendment. Yeah.
Three doesn't make sense.
3 doesn't make sense if we're going to go, no, we're
That's
going to
right.
do it now. But that makes 3 makes sense in the motion that's actually on the table.
But not the one I've put there.
Councillor Isselman, if this is going to be your amendment, what would you like to do with it?
I'd like to take 3 out.
Promote to the community, or get rid of it?
But, Mark, you've already passed the first one.
I haven't passed anything, I'm only talking about it. It says consolidate the Australia Day Awards ceremony into one event annually in Tumut starting 2020 and including consolidation of award nomination.
But you moved the first one as well.
Through the chair, an amendment can be moved?
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Nominate and voting procedures and the management of this under one committee. Committee having increased membership of community representatives. Encourage and provide support to the individual Australia Day events in each year to the local communities and community groups to conduct local community Australia. Yes.
So, as in a point of clarification, as is done presently.
Yes.
Well, they can change. Ballet could make a luncheon instead of a ballet. I mean, you know, breakfast. I mean,
I'm just speaking for Tumut. They're very.
Yeah.
They run a beautiful event.
Yep.
You know, I think it should be noted that the
As
way the
they might run
Tumut
if
community
they wish.
to be run as a wish. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say, Bruce. Yeah.
So you want to put in their community groups to conduct their traditional local community Australia Day celebrations?
As they wish. Yeah.
As they wish.
As they wish.
Yeah.
With the support, with the normal SBC support.
Yeah.
With traditional SBC support.
With traditional SBC. Historical.
Historical, yeah. Historical rather than traditional, I think.
Right.
Okay,
Historical.
I'll move out of committee, please, sir, and we'll vote on that. Oh, sorry.
Hold on.
Yeah, we just pulled the teeth out of the tiger.
The mover. So what's the last bit of the discussion then? So what have you got up there?
It says with the traditional SBC support.
Which should read historical.
Historical, I think, rather than traditional.
I don't mind. Historical, yeah.
Probably will be historical, but hang on. Well, it can't be SVC support. Oh, well,
It has to be historical SVC support.
Because
we've done it for the last 2 years.
we've done it the last 2 years.
Supply the cake.
Yeah.
We've had a cake every year for 15 years.
Okay.
So, councillors, can I just...
Can we get rid of SVC, historical support?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Can I just note, councillors, that you've got an existing budget for this, and you're going to possibly add 2 communities or more into that budget. So if you need additional budget for that, we'd have to consider that at budget review.
Why does that matter? We're doing historically about how it's been
We've
done.
never had Cancoban and...
Yeah,
So you
that's
have a
right. Well,
budget-
if you're putting in historically, there's no need. It continues.
So might I just
But
say...
they haven't had it.
Can
I
I
know.
just say that
Yep.
you
I
currently
know.
buy 5 cakes or 10 cakes or whatever, and if you've got to buy 12 cakes,
It's going to cost more.
it's going to cost more. And it's not just the cakes, it's all the components of that you provide support. So the support that we provide for those existing groups, that all adds up. So you either decrease that support and spread it over more communities, which is fine. But if you want to provide the exact same support, there may need to be a budget adjustment to that.
Smaller
I don't know at this stage, but I'm just making that comment.
Well, if that's the case, we have to wait till Cancoban comes and puts a presentation.
Smaller
to us.
cakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
No cake.
Cupcake.
There's lots of ways to do that.
Councillor Risselman.
Moving out of...
Second.
Councillor Lara. All in favour?
So,
And I'm happy to second it.
I put the amendment
Moving the amendment as written.
as written.
Seconder?
Yeah, already.
Councillor Lara. Councillor Risselman.
I'm leaving it as it is now. Thank you very much. I've said enough.
Speaker against?
I'll speak against it and I'll vote against one.
So this is the amendment. Speaking against the amendment, Councillor Ham?
It's speaking one in the amendment, not 2, and
But it's going to be put as one, so you'll be
Can we just
speaking.
leave the amendment up there?
Okay.
okay. So yes, so I'm going to push for the Tumut about which was. So I'm not supporting the amendment.
That would be correct.
That's right.
Yep.
Your vote will be recorded.
Nothing to close on that, thank you.
Any further speakers?
Actually, it should be it should be the opposite, shouldn't it? Margaret's actually made the amendment, not me. I'm seconding.
Go for
Yes,
So
I'm.
you're
You're
surrounding the
seconding
other way. Susan, please. Margaret Isselman's the mover of that amendment, and John Marty's the second, so just the other way around. So, councillors, can I just make a note of process that might complicate matters, but might assist matters? So, you can foreshadow an amendment here. So, you've got your original motion, you've got an amendment, but Julia, if you want to foreshadow that you want Tumut and Tumba in there, that sits to the side so that people know that when they're voting on the amendment, that if they like your foreshadowed amendment, that can actually come back onto the agenda if they vote against the amendment, and then that becomes the amendment, and you go down that process. So it's just a bit about process. I'm not trying to influence how you do it, but it can be a better way to progress the discussion on. And I'm happy to help you through that if that's what you want to do.
So, Councillor Hand, is that the way you want to go?
Yep.
You want to foreshadow?
Yep.
So
if we
the same as that, but we've got Tumut.
Tumba and Tumut biannually.
So we just record a foreshadowed amendment. So just cut and paste that. Susan. Make sure we call it a foreshadowed amendment. And it's not, you don't need a seconder for that because it's just noting it there. Yeah, but you might want to note that Councillor Hand foreshadowed an amendment. So we get this wording right for the foreshadowed amendment, so you're including rotating between Tumut and Tumbarumba.
Yeah. Sorry, Margaret, now I'm going to ask whether within yours as well, the consolidated award nomination, it's actually awards, isn't it? Because we want a Citizen of the Year, a Senior and a Junior SVC.
I don't think that's, I think award can be plural as well.
Just make it a plural. Just so it's still not clear in the report that that is what it actually is.
It's like sheep.
Can we put an S in, Mark?
Yep.
So if we just stop on that foreshadowed amendment, that's the only change that you're proposing, Julia, so that it rotate between the two towns.
Yeah, and the consolidation of awards nomination, but that's going to be the same on the amendment as well.
Just go to yes on both. If the mover of the amendment is happy to add this as well, we'll do that in the amendment and the foreshadowed amendment.
Yes, I'm
award
happy.
to awards. Yeah. Cool. Awards on that one. Yep, you had the right spot. And can you go back to the amendment?
Yes, please, nominations.
I'm going to wordsmith it out. Nominations.
For Susan.
Go to two. S is on each of them. Hand up those.
Councillor Hand, do you really want the yes on awards and nominations? Or do you
I want
just
to do nominations.
Yeah,
Nomination of award nominations, yep, that's fine.
Award, actual awards.
Award, senior.
We both agree to that, the amendment and the foreshadowed amendment, just clarifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alright, are you happy with that?
Yep.
Yeah, so can I just slowly take you through the process so that we're all clear on what we're doing? So the foreshadowed amendment sits to the side.
Yeah.
You now go back to the amendment and you vote on the amendment. So once you vote on the amendment, it either gets up or down.
Yeah.
And then you follow that process from there. So if the amendment gets up, then you go to that amendment and you actually have a vote on that amendment. If the amendment falls down, then your foreshadowed comes back and becomes the new amendment. You vote on that. If it gets up, then you get the chance to actually vote on that amendment as the motion. And if it gets down, then you end up back to your original motion. So Do you want me to run through that?
Good.
Yeah.
You need to do it.
Okay, so maybe what we could do is head into committee and do a straw vote.
No, let's go to the
Okay, well, yeah, well, let's just do it. So you've got an amendment there. So if people are happy with the amendment that Margaret has moved, which is just in relation to the Tumut event for Australia Day starting from next year, etc., then you vote for that. If you like one of the other options, you vote against that amendment. So let's take that step, and then I'll talk through the next step. You're not in committee?
We're at committee. So we're putting the amendment. We're all clear. We're putting the amendment that Councillor Isselman's proposed. So putting the amendment, all in favour of the amendment?
You need to have the councillor's name for this one.
And against?
Yes.
Okay. Three. Motion successful.
So then your amendment becomes a motion, and then you vote on that.
So the amendment is now being made to the motion. So all those in favour of the amendment?
Is it the same?
And against?
Yes, can we just hold it there? Can I just check we've got all councillors listed there? Susan, sorry. Lara Cross, Benjamin Easton, Smith, we're missing Anne. Okay, I'm sure we replicate that in a second. Amendment on the motion. Motion and the same vote is on that. And so we've got an Australia Day event in June.
Right. Moving on. Councillor Benjamin leaves the room. Okay, management reports 1014 DA 33 Maribel Street. Councillor Larda.
I'd like to move a motion that is alternate to the officer's recommendation, and that alternative is that one, council receive the report on development application number 2019/0075, conversion of a bedroom unit, bedroom to professional consulting room at 33 Maribel Street, Tumut, from the Division Manager Development and Environment.
He's moving on.
So we get rid of staff recommendation.
And to determine the development application by consent, subject to the following, with the conditions of consent.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask you, Mr. Mayor?
Certainly, Councillor.
That's all.
Can I just ask about the late report? Copy of the late report? Do we have a copy of it?
It's in the hub.
It's in the hub.
Yeah.
Copies in the hub.
I'll go.
This one. We go with that or?
Nothing is here.
I don't know, just make it, but there's the right to sit there
Oh, yeah, no, we haven't got a second there. I'll wait for Margaret to come.
Can I just, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, can I just make a note that at the top it says Maribel Street Tumut conversation of bedroom rather than conversion?
Well, there's more to talk about. Councillor Larder, we've got you moving that.
That's correct.
And do we have a seconder? Just didn't know what it says. Right, I think Councillor Larder read through the... Councillor Larder, do you want to go through that again?
That Council received the report on development application number 2019/0075, conversion of a bedroom to professional consulting room at 33 Marybelle Street, Tumut, from the Division Manager Development Environment, and 2, determine the development application by consent to the subject to the following conditions of consent, and then those consents are listed in order of 1 to 6. Conditions of consent general. The development shall be in accordance with the plan, specifications and statement of environmental effects bearing the Snowy Valleys Council approval stamp and any amendments marked in red or otherwise modified by conditions of consent. The plans referenced by this approval are as follows. Sheet description, site plan number 02, 15719, revision 4, existing and proposed floor plan, dwelling, number 3, 15719, revision 3, accessible facilities plans, number 05, date 28/3/19, revision 2, alterations to existing front building plan, number 4, date 28/3/19, revision 2, statement of effects, date 15/7/19. The development application has been determined by the granting of consent subject to and as amended by the conditions of development consent specified below. In the event of any inconsistency between the consent documentation and the consent conditions, the conditions of this consent prevail. Reason: it is in the public interest that work is carried out in accordance with the approved plan, section 4.15 in brackets 1 in brackets E of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 as amended. 2. Pursuant to clause 93 and or 94 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Regulation 2000, the existing building must be brought into partial conformity with the Building Code of Australia in respect to the provisions of A. Access for people with disabilities in accordance with AS 1428.1 in brackets 2011 to the public areas of the building, the subject of this consent. B. As the improvements to the building are not required by state regulations and are a voluntary upgrade, Council will allow a shared path from the accessible parking to the entrance to both of the public areas of the building from the site. C. The additional consulting room within the secondary dwelling is to be provided with a smoke detector fitted in accordance with National Construction Code, Volume 2-2019, Part 3.7.5.2, and interlinked with the existing smoke alarms within the building so that if one alarm activates, all alarms activate. Reason: to ensure that the building has adequate amenity, structural integrity and life safety appropriate to the use of the premises. During construction. 3. The permitted construction must not cause noise or permit a power tool to be used on premises in such a manner that the noise that can be heard within a habitable room in any other residential premises in brackets, regardless of whether any door or window to that room is open, close brackets, A, before 9 a.m. or after 8 p.m. on any Sunday or public holiday, or B, before 7 a.m. or after 8 p.m. on any other day. Reason, to ensure building works do not have adverse effects on the amenity of the area. In accordance with the Protection of the Environment Operation, in brackets, Noise Control Regulation 2008. Prescribed conditions. 4. All building work must be carried out in accordance with the requirements of the Building Code of Australia, in brackets, as in force on the date of the application for the relevant construction certificate or complying development certificate was made, close bracket. Reason, to ensure the development complies with the requirements imposed under Clause 98 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Regulations 2000, as amended in Section 4.17 in brackets 11 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. 5. Prior to works commencing, a sign must be erected in a prominent position on any work site on which work involved in the erection or demolition of a building is being carried out. A. That unauthorised entry to the site is prohibited, and B. Showing the name of the person in charge of the work site and the telephone number at which that person may be contacted outside work hours. C. The development consent or complying development consent number, the name and contact details of the principal certifying authority. Any sign must be removed when the work has been completed. Note, this condition does not apply to A. Building work carried out inside an existing building, or B. Building work carried out on premises that must be occupied continuously, in brackets, both during and outside work hours while the work is being carried out. Reason, to ensure the development complies with the requirements imposed under Clause 98 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Regulations 2000, as amended, and Section 4.17 in brackets 11 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. Ongoing use. 6. The proposed use of the secondary dwelling consulting room must be limited to one consulting room only and shall not operate outside the following hours: 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Saturdays. Reason, to protect the amenity of the neighbourhood. Finished.
So, we've got a move and a seconder. Do we have a second?
Not yet.
Bill, could you plug Councillor Simon's right podium, please?
Oh, just plug in, it just won't be off.
Been unplugged because it was interfering with the cameras. It was unplugged because it was getting away the camera.
Right.
You all right?
So, yeah,
You've got a paper copy?
Got a paper copy, thank you.
So we've got a move and a seconder. Councillor Hannah. Councillor Lara, after you've got some voice vote.
Yeah, look, I commend this to council. I think it really is a necessary thing for this community to have good health services. It's not our usual practice to be inconsistent with our parking DCPs, but on this occasion I think we need to judge this on a case-by-case basis, and the fact that this is a consulting room in a new medical centre will provide a great deal of benefit to Tumut and a great deal of benefit to the surrounding community for the Snowy Valleys Council area, in encouraging specialists to come and visit and provide that necessary health link and service to vulnerable communities and to the elderly and to those that need additional health services and interaction that can't otherwise go to Wagga or Canberra because of transport or financial constraints. And this, to me, will just take that burden away from those people and ensure that we've got equity of healthcare in our community, and that we don't get over-regulated on worrying about whether we've got one car spot at the expense of trying to help somebody who really needs to access a health professional.
Thank you, Councillor Lara. Any other speakers? Put the motion, all in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Ham. You want to read it after? Councillor Benjamin, the original recommendation was replaced by an alternative recommendation, and Councillor Larder will bring you up to date on that afterwards.
Thank you.
Next one I have is 10.1.5 development application, construction of Batlow Community Library, variation to DCP control for another parking lot. Okay. Councillor Isserman, Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would hope that in our very, very reasonable attitude towards parking, that we weren't going to consider anything like requiring additional parking for our library in Batlow. Having no difficulty in finding a parking Batlow on any occasion, except perhaps when the Cider Fest is on, and even then I can find a park. So if I could just suggest that the parking issues that are raised in this report are of no real value to the development of a library in Batlow.
Councillor Smith.
Can I make the point that the library is already operating and won't alter the operation of the library in any way, shape or form, so it won't increase traffic or parking requirement or the need for parking on the site what is currently in existence.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Good point. Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous as well. Councillors, if I can take you to the late report. Which is 10.16, Rural Fire Service request for levelling aircraft movement. And the recommendation is that we receive this report of the Rural Fire Service request for levelling the aircraft movement area adjacent to the RFS shed from the Director of Assets and Infrastructure. Endorse proceeding with the levelling work as recommended. Endorse funding the levelling work from the Aerodrome Reserve, and I believe the cost is 15,600.
A little more than the Australia Day cakes.
Moved by Councillor Larder and seconded by Councillor Wright.
Can I just say that there's obviously been some long-standing issues at the Tumut Aerodrome with regard to emergency services use, and in particular the RFS have not been satisfied, for want of a better word, about some of the issues at the airport. So I think it's prudent on us to make sure that we are doing whatever we can as an organisation to support the emergency services and ensure that we're protecting probably one of our greatest assets in our forestry and national parks in our region. And just to flow on from that, can I just acknowledge the work of Hines. This was something that's been brought up at the very last minute by the RFS, and can I say that he has acted promptly with a great deal of consideration and made things happen really, really efficiently, and he's to be commended on this to get that report up and get this all actioned in a matter of days from the RFS is exactly the sort of stuff that we need to be doing in this organisation going forward. Thank you for that.
If you've got any left over, you can put it to the Australia Day cakes.
We probably just need to, if the second is happy too, I wouldn't mind just adding on a further recommendation there, number 4, to endorse that Council seek any further funding opportunities to improve or upgrade the Tumut Airport in view of our emergency services requirements, Snowy 2.0, and future passenger or training needs at the airport. It was one of the things that the Mayor and I spoke with the Deputy Prime Minister about, and there are some upcoming opportunities with regard to funding announcements through the federal government with regard to airports, which he encouraged us to apply for. And so, you know, I think if we've got that on the books there, then that's a perfect opportunity for us to look at that and perhaps upgrade the lighting from, you know, the previous good efforts of the volunteers to bring it to current standards, and perhaps look at, you know, opportunities to lengthen the runway and improve all the amenity around the hard stands and the taxiways, etc. So that the difficulty is even the helicopters now are getting that heavy. The maximum takeoff and landing weight at our airport is 5,700 kilos, which essentially nearly covered most types of aircraft, you know, previously. But with advances, you know, things are getting bigger, and even the helicopters now are about 8,000 kilos. So in theory, they breach the, you know, the landing and takeoff weight at the airport for actually being able to operate on our taxiways and runways. So, you know, we need to make sure that we comply with legislation and not having to keep giving out dispensations for aircraft to land there when we can upgrade.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Wright, are you happy with that, that number 4?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Anything further?
Yes, will I add something, please? Talking about additional opportunities for funding, there is an allowance within our budget for maintenance of the trees at the end of the runway, which I believe is $40,000 every year. And I think that's an extraordinary amount of money to be topping off the top of trees as aircraft come in and go out. And I think perhaps if we were to add into their additional funding opportunities, we could actually look at what we could do about those trees rather than keep putting money into them. $40,000 a year to upgrade the airport would be an incredible amount of money. So,
Councillor Smythe, I think that could probably go into the plan. That could be something that the airport committee can come back to us with. Happy with that? Yep. Anything further? Good pick up, thank you. All in favour? Carried. Unanimously. We're moving on to the minutes of committee meetings. The first one's the Local Traffic Committee, 11.1.
That's it. Oh, yeah. I'm happy to move it.
Councillor Lada, Councillor Ham.
If we could perhaps just, in view of the previous comments that I made around the intersection at Snowy Mountains Highway there at the brewery, that Kappa Street, that we get somebody to look at that. I find it quite strange that under occupational health and safety legislation, you know, if we identify something, we have to act in a workplace or whatever. But it seems odd to me that we can, as a multi-million-dollar operating council with RMS approvals, identify, you know, through police, through ambulance, through emergency management committees, through traffic committees, and through our own due diligence that this intersection is unsafe, but we can't do anything about it. I mean, I think the legislation should be amended, and perhaps that's something we need to talk to the relative minister about. If a council determines that something is unsafe in regards to a road, even if we don't have jurisdiction over it, we should be able to enforce the fact that it should be fixed, because we're experts in this matter by virtue of the fact that we have approvals to build these roads. So, you know, if we can demonstrate that there's continual accidents there and that there's obviously issues, then we should be able to just come in and say, well, you've got 30 days to fix it, or we're going to.
It's a good point to bring up with Minister.
So, are you happy with that? Further point, next point, number 9?
Yeah.
Okay. Is the seconder happy with that?
Just adding dangerous.
Yep.
So that's relevant.
Okay. Anything further on any of those? I know some of these have been in the pipeline for quite a while, and I'm happy that you've come to that committee.
Well, there's 4 hands up.
Yes, we can move into committee. Councillor Risselman, Councillor Cross, all in favour? Unanimous. Into committee.
Who was first? Come on, girls.
I'm just going to talk about the rural bus stop application by Hustle, the point 5 and 6. Both not approved. I'd like to consider future budget review, the allocation of funding to construct and set down bays at those two places. What is the time frame on that? Because children grow up very quickly, and obviously they need it fairly briskly. So if I'd be able to ask what the time frame would be.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. That, to me reading that was intended that would be done as part of our annual budget review.
Yeah.
So anything that comes out of the traffic committee that's not funded would go onto our list for consideration at budget time.
So we're looking, this won't be done at least for another 12
giving
months.
consideration to it until early next financial year.
So we're not looking till July next year.
Early next calendar year. Sorry, we start giving consideration to.
And then what would the time frame be after that?
If it was funded,
yep.
I mean, it'd be funded for the following financial year, which would be
another 2 years.
2021. Yep.
Is there any way we can expedite that?
Well, that's
what's the cost?
That's the question.
We don't know the cost.
Yeah, I think there's some cost plans on the back of the report as part of the minutes of the report.
15, is it?
Attachments.
Can do it, yeah, well, it'd be decision council.
Budget review. Yeah, we did this budget considering it, but if it couldn't be funded, we did then go to the next budget.
Yeah. So I suppose as an alternative, we could give consideration at the quarterly budget review process if councils wanted to expedite that process. The budget figures I've got in the order of around $12,000 is what we're looking.
So we're looking at 24,000 for both of them?
That'd be my take, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll confirm that with you.
Could we bring up business arising next meeting?
Can do, yes. If that's
Yeah,
okay.
Is it a safety concern?
Very much so.
Very much so.
Well, I mean, we should be
That's what
treating it as a matter of urgency. Have we got some...
do we have a budget existing, and this is behind this? These two projects are behind those four, or we don't not have a budget for this?
We do not have a budget at all for these works, and I suppose what I'm suggesting that we could consider as part of the budget review process, which is coming in the next
in October.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate that very much.
Okay.
Can I have an understanding of just how many children are involved and how old they are?
That probably should all come.
Or how long they've been there? Living,
and how long are they going to be there?
Until they grow up.
Yeah, but they might only just they might have been there all the time.
It's a safety issue.
Councillor,
I'm looking at point 7 here, please, people. The pedestrian access to Batlow Road is linked with the upgrade of the Batlow area with the project funding. And if that hasn't been approved, or it has already been approved, seek approval, so it's not going to be approved till the 25th of September.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Traffic Committee have approved it. We still need to go back to Transport for New South Wales, formerly RS, and seek their approval under Section 138 of the Local Government Act. So we need to flick the designs across to them and get them to approve, but the Traffic Committee is comfortable with that.
What's the time frame for that?
I couldn't commit to a time frame except that we'd expedite it from our end as quick as we possibly can. We've actually included it in the designs for the Batlow CBD upgrade. So
would it be helpful to have a letter from the Batlow Development League to support that?
I think that'd be great.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And having said that, I will make another statement, which I'm probably possibly out of position for it. The Senior Citizens Village was built across the road from the shopping centre some 25 to 30 years ago, and the shops haven't moved, and now they want a pedestrian crossing that's going to take up a great deal of the funding that's there for upgrading the road. Now, I know it's never too late to be safe, but it does seem to be a little unusual.
Isn't it going to take up a lot of parking as well?
Yep. So I'm just making the comment that this is a very contentious little issue for the whole town.
We've just heard that parking's not a problem in Badlow.
And parking's not a problem in Badlow.
But it is there when it's raining. And
So,
snowing.
okay,
Thank you.
Perhaps the village could provide parking to compensate for the loss of parking spaces on the street.
Councillor, carry on.
There is parking within the village which is
lot
not utilised. So if they have a trade-off where they offer 4 parking spaces,
I don't think it's necessary. It's just, this is approved, it's just waiting for approval from Transport New South Wales.
I'm just making the point that it's not, it's an expense that it seems to be.
But it's what the community asked for.
yes.
7 people.
Councillor Lara.
Just in regard to those bus stops, is there any scope? I noticed we're 20,000 under, for instance, on the Rosewood Golf Club. Says remaining funds set aside as contingency for other projects within the funding stream. Is there any way that those bus stops can be put in the
I
funding
think the
stream?
over and unders can only be used for the projects identified there.
Yeah. And with the Rosewood, it looks fabulous, it's just great, but it's very slippery, and now they have to paint it with the, so some of the roads will be used with that non-slip paint.
Anything for Councillor Cross?
Can I talk about the Capper Street intersection?
Well, it's on the agenda now, it's number 9.
Yep. So is Capper Street part, one of our local government roads?
Yes.
Yes.
So Inspector Radford suggested putting some kind of
rumble
rumble
strips
on it. Wouldn't that be a simple way of alerting people to slow down and stop? I've been at the brewery and I've watched this car go straight round the corner, police car here, waving to the police car. He had no idea there was a stop sign, so of course he gets pinged. People don't appreciate the fact that there is a stop sign there, so if we put these rumble strips, that would be a simple matter to show that we are really serious about this intersection being dangerous. We've done our bit, RMS, up to you to do your bit.
Is there a stop sign there? Or is there
Yes, yes, there is a stop sign.
There is a stop sign.
Yeah.
There is a stop sign there.
It's changed recently. Used to be
Yes, exactly. So we need to alert people to the fact so that they don't go sailing around and wave to the policeman.
Which is great unless you're a cyclist, and cyclists hate it. So,
Okay.
We could get our road safety officers to have a look at what treatments we could apply at our end. Just provide some options.
It wouldn't cost much, surely.
Yep.
And it would be an interim measure until something is done. The brewery guys tell me that there's a near miss nearly every day. So we're just waiting for someone to get killed.
Put rumble strips in the shape of bodies.
Okay. Spending too much time at the brewery, Councillor.
all in research.
So have we exhausted?
Yeah. Thank you. Move on, Committee.
Oh, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Wright. All in favour? That's carried. So we have 11.1 there, and we now have 9 recommendations. Happy for me to put those? All in favour?
Oh, you know.
That's unanimous. Sports Committee? 4 recommendations there.
Move all the recommendations.
Move all the recommendations, thank you. Second, Councillor Benjamin. Councillor Benjamin. Councillor Benjamin, did you have any say on this?
Through the chair, I'd just like to say this was a good meeting. It's good to see some new members coming into the sporting committee, the Tumut Region Sporting Committee. And yeah, basically putting in their grants to sustain some new equipment and some upgrades to their to their sporting committee. So yeah, it was a tough one, but we got there.
Thank you. Anything further? Put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Unanimous. Next one's the Development League. 3 recommendations there. Core and Councillor Smith and Councillor Isselman. Self-explanatory.
Yeah, there is comment about that
Toilets?
the toilets, but also the crossing was commented on. I just noticed a moment ago. Certainly the BDL are keen for that crossing to be installed. Whoever else in town may or may not be interested in doing that. The Development League certainly is behind getting that crossing done. The public toilets are of particular concern. It was recommended and moved that the public toilets in Pioneer Street next to the Literary Institute be inspected and an audit be conducted as to whether they currently meet health standards and regulations. The BDL also request a copy of the report and that any problems should be rectified and brought up to code.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Anything further? Put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Festival of Falling Leaf, AGM. 2 recommendations there, including recommendations for the committee members there. Councillor Lada and Councillor Benjamin. Comments? All in favour? Carried. Unanimous. Cancabon Community Committee meeting, 3rd of July. Councillor Ham, Councillor Smith.
I'd just like to, once again, it's such a pleasure going down there to the Cougar meetings, but to add another recommendation, number 3, to change the name of the Cancobin Community Committee meeting to the Cancobin United Volunteers Committee, as mentioned in the general business.
That is Cancobin United Volunteers Association.
No, Cancobin United Volunteers. Oh yeah, Association. Cougar.
So you're adding that, Councillor Smith, you're happy with that?
Yes.
Yes.
And the community is happy with that?
They are very happy with that.
They're keen to do that.
They're keen to do that, and they're putting all their accounts into one under that name. So I think it all should fly.
Good, thank you very much, and thank you for attending those meetings.
It's our pleasure.
United
United Volunteers Association.
All in favour? Carried unanimously.
Can I just mention as passing that one of the members of that committee has created enormous jigsaw puzzles in the form of massive artworks. There's one that's as big as that whole wall that's on display in the Canberra Zoo and Aquarium, and there's another one on display at the Corryong Hospital that's probably half that size, and she has done that as a community thing, and it's on display for visitors and tourists in the town to come and have a look at the hospital. It's an amazing piece of work.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. We'll now move into confidential. The Local Government Act provides that Council may close to the public that part of the meeting that deals with matters of a confidential nature. Section 10(2) lists such matters. The grounds on which meetings is closed to the public must be specified in the decision to close the meeting and recorded in the minutes of the meeting. The recommendation is that Council move into a confidential to consider the matters listed in the confidential section of the agenda in accordance with Section 10(2) of the Local Government Act 1993, for the reasons specified. 12.1, Snowy Valley Council's community grants. Item 12.1 is confidential under the Local Government Act 1993, Section 10A2DI, as it relates to commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it and council considers that discussion of the matter in an open meeting would be, on balance, contrary to the public interest. In 12.2, Batlow Cannery Development Steps, item 12.2 is confidential under the Local Government Acts 1993, section 10A2DI, as it relates to the commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it, and council considers that discussion of the matter in an open meeting would be, on balance, contrary to the public interest. Now, before I ask you to move that, I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the 3 directors who left council this week. I want to thank them for their hard work and dedication and wish them the best for the future. Thank you. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Benjamin, Councillor Cross, all in favour? Carried. If I ask the public to leave, please.
read them on the weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Moved out of confidential now. Ask the General Manager to report.
Council considered two reports in confidential. The first report, Snowy Valleys Council Community Grants. Council resolved that they receive the report on the SVC Community Grants from the Coordinator of Community and Cultural Development. Note the decisions of the Grant Assessment Panel meeting on the 5th of July 2019. Adopt the following recommendations from the Grant Assessment Panel. The Council endorsed the funding of $60,340 for the following Community Strengthening Grant. Adelong Progress Association $5,000, Batlow Apple Tree Learning Centre $5,000, Batlow Women's Bowling Club $700, Southwest Slope Sporting Fields Archer $1,360, Tumut District Historical Society $1,000, Tumut Regional Chamber of Commerce $5,500, Tumut Regional Producers and Makers Cooperative $15,000, Tumut Schools and Community Centre $1,690, Tumut Youth Council $4,090, Brungle Memorial Hall Committee $5,000, and Council defer consideration of item D, Lions Club Tumut for $6,000. In regards to the second section of that, the Council received the report on the SVC Community Grants from the Coordinator of Community and Cultural Development. Note the decisions of the Grant Assessment Panel meeting held on the 5th of July 2019. Adopt the following recommendations from the Grant Assessment Panel. The Council endorsed the funding of $22,959 for the following art and cultural development grants. Artists on the Parade $2,500, Festival of the Falling Leaf $4,000, Franklin Public School $4,000, Tumbarumba District Garden Club $700, Tumut District Historical Society $1,000, Tumut Golf Club $5,000, Tumut Performing Arts Society $1,000, Tumut Rock the Turf Committee $4,000, Tumut Valley Country Music Club $759, and the Council review the grant guidelines and processes to be more reflective of the One SVC philosophy. In regards to the item about the Batlow Cannery steps, Council resolved. The Council received the report on the Batlow Cannery clean-up and development investigations from the Acting Director of Strategy, Community and Development. Council write to the respondents of the expressions of interest process for the Batlow Cannery, thanking them for their participation and informing them that the OI process is terminated. The Council proceed to tender for the targeted demolition and clean-up of the following on the cannery site. A. Removal of above-ground storage tank. B. Removal of asbestos debris on ground and floor surfaces. C. Demolition of building E. D. Removal of a full bay of building B closest to building A. Removal of building G and de-installation of the way bridge infrastructure to be returned to the Forestry Corporation. F. Options for removing the and sale of building D. G. General clean-up of the site including removal of weeds, plants and debris. H. Making safe the buildings A2, Bow Trust Building. And 4. Proceed to the development of a business case for the Batlow Cannery site, including site use opportunities by EOI submitters, considering the 3 options provided for identifying and cultivating positive reuse of the site.
Thank you, General Manager. That concludes the business for today, 15th of August 2019. Thank you very much for your attendance.